It's Wednesday, July 22nd, 2015, and this is the Product Mentor Talk. Today we're joined by one of our mentors, Vikas Batra, Senior Product Manager at Alcatel-Lucent, and he's going to lead a talk today on the role of emotional intelligence in product. Allow me to just briefly explain the format for those of you who are joining us for the first time today. The people you see along the bottom of your screen, if you guys can just wave hi for me. Those are mentors and mentees within the Product Mentor program, session 3 right now that we're in. And the Product Mentor is about pairing up one mentor and one mentee together for a period of 6 months, where we help mentees who are maybe new to product, senior, but basically looking to improve their product management careers, whether it's digital, physical products, all kinds of things, all types of product roles. And so myself, I run the Product Mentorship program, but I'll tell you a little bit more about me in just a moment. Let's just kind of quickly go around the room and hear a little bit about the people and see who's a mentor and who's a mentee. Let's start with Anthony.
Hey guys, I'm Anthony Wynn, and I'm a product manager at Vitals, a healthcare transparency. Excuse me, healthcare transparency tech company. It's a mouthful, and I'm really looking forward to learning about EQ.
Awesome. And Jordan.
Hi, I'm Jordan Bertram. I'm one of the group leads in the Product Mentor. And I head up a product management function for a company called Service Channel, a B2B SaaS company.
Great. And Vikas.
Hi, my name is Vikas Batra, and as introduced, I'm with the product management team at Alcatel-Lucent, and I'm one of the mentors.
Great. And so, as I was saying earlier, my name is Jeremy Horn. I'm also known as the Product Guy. I'm the organizer for the product group, as well as this Product Mentor program that some of the folks joining along the bottom of the screen are part of. Because there are so many mentees and so few mentors in the program, we have over 500 mentees currently on our wait list. What we do is we make these live streams available to the rest of the world, the rest of the internet. And as a result, what you can also do is you can also ask questions. So the people in the room can ask questions, but also the rest of the internet can as well. And to ask your questions, you should be at theproductmentor.com/live. On that page, you can see a place to post your questions. As the questions come in, I will take them and pass them along to our mentor tonight. So with that said, let's get the talk going, and I'll hand it over to you, Vikas.
Okay, thanks, Jeremy. Imagine yourself convincing your internal stakeholders to go with a product vision or roadmap that you have developed. Imagine yourself motivating and inspiring your team to make that product vision a reality. Imagine influencing your customers to buy your product, even though they really want to buy their competitor's product. If that is what you aspire to be, then what we're going to talk about today might just be that missing piece of the puzzle that gets you there. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about emotional intelligence and the role of emotional intelligence in product management. So we'll start with what is emotional intelligence, what is the role in product management. We'll get into how do we determine how emotionally intelligent you are. And then we'll get into how to raise one's emotional intelligence. I'll talk a little bit about the process and then share some of my own experiences in raising my own emotional intelligence. And finally, some additional resources for you to look into later on. So what is emotional intelligence? Emotional intelligence essentially is the capacity to recognize one's own feeling and those of others and manage them, both in ourselves and in others, in order to drive positive outcomes. So it's a concept that has been there for decades, and it was popularized by a guy named Daniel Goleman through his book with the same name. And when he popularized this, it was received very well in the business community. So at a high level, if you look at emotional intelligence, there are 4 components to it. 2 of them pertain to self, 2 of them pertain to others. And the first one is what's called a self-awareness. Essentially, the ability for an individual to recognize his own emotions in the moment while they are happening. It also includes the ability to understand one's own emotional tendencies or triggers, meaning certain situation may cause certain feelings to occur due to whatever reasons. The ability to be aware of that. The ability to have physiological impact of your emotions. So for example, when I'm angry, I crush my teeth. Ability to know that helps better recognition, because you may not recognize that you're angry, but you would feel you're crushing your teeth, which may then help you recognize that you're angry. At least that's what happens in my case. Self-awareness also includes knowing what is really important to you. What is it that really matters? What are your clear motivations, and what are your values? Moving on to next one is self-management, which is essentially, once you're aware of your feelings, how do you regulate them, and how do you respond to them rather? So there are two pieces to it. One is for your negative feelings, how are you able to control it, to get into a situation where you're not getting carried away by them. And the second piece is the ability to use those emotions to drive positive actions. The third piece is the social awareness, essentially the ability to recognize feeling in others, realizing that how they feel might be very different from how you feel. It also has the ability to anticipate what they might be thinking if in response to an action from you. It also includes the ability to understand their perspective, their concern. What is it that is making them feel a certain way? And finally, relationship management. It's the ability to take the self-awareness and social awareness, manage the two together in order to have better relationships and in order to drive positive outcomes. Essentially, the idea is to be able to manage your interactions, the emotions in your interactions more effectively and successfully. All these skills are build-up skills in the sense that they build on each other. Self-awareness is prerequisite for self-management. Similarly, social awareness and self-management are both required before you get into relationship management. And these skills are essentially soft skills in the sense that you have to combine it with other cognitive skills. It is not that you just need only these soft skills in order to be successful. Another way to look at emotional intelligence is to look at it at three planes. So at one plane you have emotions, how you feel. At the other plane is what you think. This is basically your rational or the logical part of the brain. And the third plane is the actions, what you say or what you do. So there's interaction between emotions and thoughts. Emotions trigger thoughts and thoughts trigger emotions. And self-awareness, of course, is being aware of those emotions in addition to the motivations and the values that I talked about earlier. And self-management is all about taking the response to those emotions in terms of your actions and also in terms of your thoughts. So the idea, as I was mentioning here, is to be able to regulate, to be able to control how you react to those emotions. The other piece we also need to understand is that these skills, the logical and the rational skills, are complementing them. We're not saying that those are not required. In fact, those are critically important. But the topic of the day today is focusing on emotions, how we can use those emotions in order to get the positive results that we're chasing. So moving on to the interaction space in the same model, the emotions, thought, action planes that we have in ourselves, the same is on the other people as well. And we need to understand that our actions can have impact on the other person's emotion and the other way around. The other piece also is that emotions can also have a direct impact to the emotions. So for example, if you are really happy and really excited about something, you would transmit at an emotional level the same feeling to others as well. So, it's essentially like almost like a fundamental skill around communication. Just like we use English language or any other language to communicate through our words, we also have another plane of communication going on at the emotions level. So the visibility into that, tuning into that, your emotions, the emotions of the other person, or in a group, emotions of multiple people in a group, that is what is emotional intelligence awareness all about. And then you augment it with the ability to manage it, ability to drive it, such that you drive the actions that you're wanting to drive. This topic has been widely written about. There are a lot of books around it. A lot of organizational behaviorists have done research, written papers, and stuff like that. And some of the studies have found a clear indication that says that people with higher emotional intelligence tend to outperform those which are low on emotional intelligence, particularly in roles that are people oriented, that involve a lot of interaction with people. And if you look at product management, we have a lot of people interaction in the product management role. The role inherently is people oriented because you have to interact with a lot of people and drive a lot of people in a certain direction. So from that perspective, emotional intelligence and the enhanced communication skills that you get with it are clearly critical for success in product management. So let me give some examples here of certain specific areas within product management where emotional intelligence would be particularly beneficial. These are some of the examples that are listed out. This is by no means an exhaustive list, but it will just give an idea of some of the areas where it could be beneficial, or it is certainly beneficial. So the first one is around product discovery, where you're trying to understand what the customer needs are. And the ability to empathize and understand how the other party is feeling is critical in understanding what the real pain points are. Because more often than not, in any activity like a focus group or any interaction with the customers, the real pain points are not communicated verbally. You have to develop a deeper understanding to get to the real pain points. Moving on to product delivery, influencing, motivating, driving teamwork, all of these, folks with higher degree of self-awareness, who have a good view of what their motivations are, they tend to be more authentic and more genuine. Empathy is pretty important in all of them. The ability to be able to understand how the other person feels and anticipate how they would feel when you make an argument. Knowing that you can adjust or you can make more compelling arguments by taking the anticipated impact on the feeling when you make these arguments to together influence or motivate or drive teamwork. The other thing I want to point out here is that in all of these, you have to combine emotional intelligence with cognitive skills or the skills around the rational and logical mind. It's not just emotional intelligence by itself is sufficient, but it's a piece of it which we're going to talk about. So for example, when you're influencing your stakeholders, you have to understand what is the decision-making style, what is the data that is needed to make that argument, what is the whole logical argument that has to be made around it. In motivating and in inspiring others, you have to understand what are the aspirations of the team and find a way wherein their aspirations are aligned with the product goal that you're trying to achieve. And once that alignment happens, that's when you can essentially get folks to get motivated and inspired from an emotional perspective. Of course, you will have to bring in your product knowledge, your market knowledge, and whatever your product vision is, that has to be in itself compelling from a logical perspective as well. When you're driving teamwork, you have to understand that what are the needs, what are the challenges that the teams are facing, the ability to again empathize with them and combine the empathy with what their challenges are and driving that fit over there. Coming to product marketing, influencing the customers. Now this one is different between B2B products and B2C, or even between products and services. But fundamentally, there are often times where product decisions, meaning product selection, rather one vendor or one solution versus other, happens at an emotional level for emotional reasons. For example, let's start with B2B. Oftentimes, when in B2B scenarios, when the products are either comparable or are difficult to compare, business often goes to a product that has better relationship or has greater trust, and that can be the differentiator in that case. In services, for example, B2B services, it's even more important, because in services, the agreement or the purchase decision is made before the actual delivery of the service. And in those cases, having a good relationship and the trust that the team will deliver what they're delivering and will also essentially take care of them when things go wrong. And oftentimes things go wrong. So in those cases, the relationship or the trust that you develop with the customers can be very, very critical. In B2C situations, it's very different, because there's no direct contact at a human level. And in those cases, the emotions are driven by the experience of using the product. What is the emotional need that product is meeting? Is it removing loneliness? Is it pride? Is it greed? Is there a primary need that is being met? Is there a secondary need being met? What features or what aspect of the product experience is either enabling or blocking those emotions? What else can be done to meet that emotional need that the product is meeting? Which other product is meeting the same emotional need of the target market? So the idea here is essentially to look at it from that emotional lens and try to make a more compelling and a more, or rather influence the customers to go with your product as opposed to that of competition. Managing product managers. So for those of you who are either managing product managers today or are aspiring to manage them, emotional intelligence is very important in terms of developing and retaining talent. And this one also you have to combine with us understanding what the team members' goals are, their aspirations are, and you have to combine them with the product goals and also coach them and develop them. As you coach them and develop them, you not only develop their product management skills, which you benefit from, but it also helps in retaining those product managers within the organization. So moving on to the next piece, how do you determine whether you're emotionally intelligent enough or not? And there are a few ways to do that. The first one is what I call as the symptoms. So essentially, look at yourself, you look at your behavior and see, is there a pattern? Is there a pattern where you do some actions that you regret later? Is there a pattern where you find yourself being challenged in building relationships with those folks whom you wish to form good relationships? Are you using only logic when you're trying to influence and not even considering the role of emotions? Are you aware of the emotional makeup of your team? And the impact of that based on your actions? So if you can, some of the answers to these questions will tell you whether you're emotionally intelligent enough or not, and that can be one way to determine where you are. Another way is to get through a formal 360-degree review or your regular performance review as well, in which case, again, you have to see, is there a repetition of certain feedback around, let's say, difficulty understanding others, or needs to work on influencing others, or building trust, relationships, and so on. If there is a pattern there, that can be an indicator, because that is how you're being perceived by others. Before I leave on this one, though, I would suggest that if your organization does offer a 360-degree review, you should take it. You should definitely take that advantage and do it, because more often than not, we all have our blind spots, and they come to light by doing a thorough 360-degree. So if you have that option, I would highly recommend take it. Another way to assess your emotional intelligence is taking some of these self-assessments that are available online. These are what I call essentially quick and dirty. They are quick in the sense that you can go to the website, answer a bunch of questions, and you'll get a score in a matter of minutes. And they're dirty because, one, they are only reflecting your own perception. And a lot of these people who research it say that their own self-impression is often very different from the perception of others. So it's a limited view in that sense. In addition, it also will not have any specifics. It will just have very general and broad statements. Do I respond effectively to my own emotions and stuff like that? At least some of the tests that I have seen, I've not seen all of them, but they seem to be they seem to be very broad. And a lot of times I found the answers are, I do it on certain occasions, I don't do it all occasions, and it gets a little bit in the gray area there. But if you don't have anything else, you can get a view of it. It just gives you some indication. Another way to determine it is to compare yourself with those who are in the positions today that you aspire to be. So, for example, if you're looking at certain VPs or GMs in roles that you aspire to be, look at their emotional intelligence. How do they react in certain situations, and compare with them, and see if where do you rate yourself compared to them. That's another way to assess that. And we also need to understand that you also have to assess it not from a perspective of whether you're emotionally intelligent enough for your current role, but for your next role that you aspire to be. Because usually, as you go higher up in the organization, the emotional intelligence need, or the level of emotional intelligence required, rises. And therefore, you have to essentially look at it not whether you're emotionally intelligent today, but where you want to be in your next role. Are you at that level? Because more often than not, in order to move to that next level, you have to demonstrate competence in your current level. So in your current level, you have to demonstrate the emotional intelligence or maturity of the next level, and that's when you will be demonstrating that you're ready for the next level.
Vikas, it looks like we've got a question. I'm going to hand it over to Anthony to ask his 2 questions.
Yeah, so this one goes back to something you mentioned a little bit earlier in the presentation. But let's see, let me look at my notes, I'm sorry here. In assessing the emotional needs of your users, and you particularly talked about this in the B2C, or I suppose the B2B2C context would work as well. I know that I've read about tools like personas or empathy maps to help kind of keep your focus on the emotional needs of your users. How do you know if these particular personas that you've created are appropriately representative of the range of users that you have?
Yeah, that's a good question, but I will prefix it by the fact that I have not had a lot of B2C experience myself, so I'm really not an expert in that area. But essentially, my understanding is that when you develop these personas, the idea here is to not to not to capture personas of different users, but essentially to pick a primary persona, which is the primary target market that you're chasing, and design around that. So it's not so much that a persona has to be representative of every market, but the primary persona, which is really strong and which does not buckle when you go in the development process. So that's a critical piece, because a lot of times if you have these multiple personas, and if there's a persona is catering to this segment and that segment and that segment, then when you have to make those priority calls, people tend to take easy. Oh, this feature is needed for this segment, but it's not needed for the other segment, so let's not do it. So one of the key things for the persona is that it should not buckle under pressure, and you achieve that by focusing it to a primary segment or the most important segment and satisfy that fully, and get the right emotional impact on that one, with the understanding that it may not be optimized for the secondary personas that are there.
Okay, that's great to think about. The other question was, and this is a perennial young product manager question, but how would you improve your ability to emotionally read the members of your cross-functional team when they're spread out amongst different offices and you're working remotely with them?
Yeah, so valid question, and very often this is the case. And to be frank with you, when you're talking to them over the phone, a lot of your clues on body language, on facial expression disappear. But there is still information in tone. There is information in their rate of speaking, in their pauses, that you can get certain insights more than just the spoken word. So yes, it is difficult, but you can do that over the phone. The other piece is that every time you happen to be in that location, let's say your people are in different locations, make it a point to have face-to-face interactions with them. And especially if they're close to you, I would also recommend to have one-on-one with them, and use that opportunity when you're there to develop those relationships and get a better understanding of where they're coming from, what their perspectives are, and what their concerns are. But it's a given. It's a given that it would be more challenging if your team is in different location compared to if your team is in the same location. You're having a lot of face-to-face conversations or interactions.
Thanks.
Great. And so for those of you who also have questions, that's all the questions we have at the moment. But if other people have questions, definitely submit your questions to theproductmentor.com/live, and I will pass them right along. And with that said, back to you, Vikas.
All right, thanks. So that was a good break point, actually. So my next set gets into how do we improve emotional intelligence. So let's say you determine that this is something that needs to be improved. So how do we go about doing that? Before I get into it, I want to share this behavior change framework, which is applicable to any behavior change, not just related to emotional intelligence. And it basically articulates 4 steps. The first step is wherein you are what's called as unconsciously incompetent, meaning that you are incompetent. You do not have that behavior. You do not have that behavioral competency, and you're not even aware that you don't have it. So you're in like blissfully ignored. Then you move to the next stage, which is becoming consciously incompetent. You know that you have a lack of a certain behavior competency. So you're aware of that. That's where the conscious part comes in, but you're still incompetent. Then you work on it and make an effort to become competent, acquire that competence. And when you consciously make an effort, you become competent. That's the next stage. So while you're making a conscious effort, you're competent. And the final stage is when you rehearsed it and practiced it enough that you do not have to make a conscious effort to demonstrate that competence. It just happens unconsciously. So that's the final stage which is unconsciously competent. And that's true in any behavior change, and even in emotional intelligence. The goal here is to get to a point where you become unconsciously competent, meaning you do not have to consciously make an effort to be competent, but you're naturally there. So how do we raise it? So I'll start with the process first, and then, as I said earlier, I'll get into some of my own experiences doing that. So in terms of the process, so the first step is essentially to document your ideal self. So once you look at what is emotional intelligence, what is it that you would like yourself, what behavior is what you would like to exhibit? List it out, and let's call it that your ideal self. And then compare that with what behaviors do you exhibit today, or what behavior you don't exhibit today, and that's when you come up with your gap list. Once you've identified your gaps, you look at what skills specifically you need to develop, and also capture a definition of done. It's important to do that because these are soft skills, and these is not very easy to measure whether you acquired or not. So it's important to define the definition of done, so that once you start to develop it, you have an end mark that you have to hit. So it's important to do that. The other piece is to follow or understand your development style. Different people have different styles of developing behavior changes. Some people like to read, some people like to write, others like to do, others like to teach. So everybody has their own style, but you have to determine what your own style is, and go with that. Most people that I know for behavioral changes have an impact by doing it, and including myself. Doing it is what really gets me to that unconsciously competent state. The other piece is, once you develop these skills, you do not have to develop them all at the same time. In fact, you should not. It's better to develop these skills sequentially. So pick some up, work on them, and as you develop some of those, you take on some new skills and go on. So it's better to do it that way than trying to do a lot of them together, or also trying to get into, let's say, relationship management to begin with, when your self-awareness skills are also gapped. And finally, it requires sustained practice. There's just no way around that I'm aware of. You have to practice it to get into that consciously competent stage, and keep on doing that till you get into the unconsciously competent state. Experiment. The beautiful thing with emotional intelligence is that it's not just in the office, it's outside the office as well. You have people interactions everywhere. You interact with a car dealer when you go buy a car. You interact with a waiter when you go in the restaurant. So you have a lot of these people interactions that are outside, and you can experiment things over there when the stakes are not high, and develop your skills that way. It's important to document practice, and I mean it's really important, because once you document what you're doing, what is working, what is not working, it gives you much better opportunity to reflect. And by reflect, I mean you introspect. Okay, I tried this, it didn't work. I tried this, it worked, or I need to do this in order for it to make it work, and so on. So it's important to reflect. And in order to reflect, you have to document it. Document what you're doing, what worked, what didn't work. And finally, you don't have to do it alone. You don't have to do it alone. You find partners. You can find partners at work. You can find partners at home, in family, wherever. And one point I would make on finding some partners at workplace is that there is often a feeling of a guilt kind of feeling when you approach somebody to say, look, I'm working to improve my emotional intelligence. Can you be my partner in giving me feedback and working with me? It feels like some people feel that they are accepting some sort of a failure by doing that. But I personally don't feel that the person who is listening to it feels that way. In fact, if somebody were to approach me I would in fact think positively about that person, because not only is he aware that this is a competence that he lacks, but he's also making a conscious effort to improve his competence. So, if you have that hesitation, uh, I think you don't have to hesitate around it. But of course, do go with somebody whom you feel is trustworthy, and somebody who would be spending time with you, or would observe you, or be in meetings with you, so that you get more feedback. I mean, if you partner with somebody who's in a different group, doesn't interact much with you, or you don't go in the meetings together, then the feedback from him will be that much limited. But it is important to have such partners, because in my case, I was doing it myself first, and once I started working with a partner, I could see much faster results and much better results, in fact, while I was doing it. But the key here, the key I want to stress here is sustained practice. And by sustained practice, I mean it can take weeks, and can even take months, depending on where you are and where you want to go. So there's just no way that I'm aware of around it.
So we just had a whole bunch of questions come in. So the first one I'm going to read off is from Jennifer. And Jennifer was asking if there's an online self-assessment that you would recommend.
Yeah, so as part of my references, I'm not recommending, rather I'm just stating one. It's called Emotional Intelligence 2.0. Once you buy that book, you get an assessment as part of it, and also they offer some tools around reminders and so on that can help you. So that's one tool. But I also have a website there. It's a consortium of emotional intelligence that has links to at least half a dozen, if not more, different emotional intelligence competency measurement frameworks, and also measurement tools. So feel free to browse them and get your self-assessment done over there.
And so these are links that'll be in the slide deck?
Yes, there is a link further down in the resources slide.
Got it. And I'll be posting those slides afterwards. And the next question goes to Anthony again. Anthony?
Yeah, so I think you mentioned some good strategies like direct inquiries or feedback from a partner. Absent those two approaches, how do you know when you're having successes in improving your emotional intelligence, or improving your ability to say properly motivate your team and align their goals with the product goals?
Yeah, it depends. It depends which competence you're looking at. So if you look at self-awareness and self-management, there's a lot that you can learn, or you can observe yourself without the partner. But if you get into social awareness, for instance, where you are trying to observe certain person's feeling or certain group's feeling, then when you have somebody else in the same room observing the same people, then if you compare, then you can get much better results there. So it's if you don't have anybody, then it does get a little difficult, and because then you're limited by your own ability to perceive the emotions of others. And you also are limited in the sense that when you say something or when you do something, what is the impact that other people are getting, or what is the emotional impact which you may not sense but your partner may sense. So the short answer is, for the self-management piece, yes, you might be able to make more progress, but for the social awareness and the relationship management, it is much more easier or much more effective if you have a partner.
That makes sense. Do you have stakeholders in mind that you think would generally be good partners in this effort? Would it be, for example, your own manager, or would you imagine it being someone subordinate to you?
I don't think it. I don't think it matters as much. Like in my case, I was interacting with a peer of mine, and we were a lot of times going in the same meeting, and we were comparing notes after that. But I personally don't see a strong reason to go either with manager or with the subordinate. It's whoever you feel comfortable with, whoever you feel uh, is at least at your emotional intelligence level and can help you out, and whoever would spend time with you or would together spend time together. I think those are some of the criteria. I mean, I don't know from a boss perspective. Um, I have not had in my experience, I've not had a situation where my boss was not that supportive of development, but I've heard in literature, or rather I've read in literature, where some people say that it's better not to be mentored by your boss, but I don't have any empirical data to either that goes in favor or against it.
Thank you.
Great. And then we have another question, and this comes from Dulio Dennis. And Dulio's asks, to your knowledge, how does emotional intelligence differ from social intelligence?
Social intelligence. Maybe I will need some, some help here as to how are you defining social intelligence. But I don't know if you're referring to what is called as spiritual intelligence, which some folks have been popularizing for some time now. But if possible, Jeremy, is it possible to get a little bit more clarity into what do they mean by social intelligence?
I think you're on the right track there in the assumptions that you're making.
Okay, yeah. So I think if we look at the spiritual intelligence piece, that's a completely different competency, if you will, and there could be a separate talk around it. But essentially, the focus there is on the spiritual aspects of one's personality, one's traits, and how they can be used both in workplace and outside. But if you look at social intelligence from a perspective of understanding the emotions of others, understanding their perspective, their concerns, what their thought process is, what their sensitivities are, then it's no different than emotional intelligence.
Great, great. And so that's all the questions we have at the moment. But as I said earlier, if you have questions, keep them coming in to theproductmentor.com/live, and I'll pass them along. With that said, sending it right back to you, Vikas.
Okay, thanks, Jeremy. So before I leave this slide, I do want to make a point. I'm stressing the sustained practice piece clearly, but I also want to make a point that if anybody thinks, or if anybody was attending this call or this talk today thinking that at the end of this talk there'll be more emotional intelligence, then that's not happening. But the good news is that all of this can be learned, and you can become more emotionally intelligent if you essentially take this effort. And it's almost a journey. It's just like a journey that you can embark. And the way I look at it is, yes, it's hard, yes, it's long, but if you look at it from a perspective of, okay, there are possibly a bunch of people who are at same emotional intelligence as you are, and those people are also going to be having to make that commitment in terms of getting onto this path, and quite a few of them will decide not to do it. And if you decide to do it and you become more emotionally intelligent, then you're certainly better off from those who decided not to do it. So that's the way I look at it. But it's again, it's something that each one of us has to make the judgment call for himself, and decide whether to do it, and also what is the right time to do it. Moving on to the next slide is, okay, why do I do this? Why do I have to go about and doing this emotional intelligence and spend these months there? So here are some of the clear benefits that I believe occur. Clearly, from a product management perspective, it increases the odds of success in your product manager role itself. Once you understand your own motivations, your own emotional makeup, what makes you happy, what doesn't make you happy, it also increases the likelihood of finding better or higher job satisfaction. Maybe within product management, maybe outside, maybe in a company, different company, but at least having better understanding of your own will help you find that better help you find greater job satisfaction. It certainly prepares you for leadership roles. As I mentioned earlier, as you grow up the hierarchy within the organization, the criticality of emotional skills become even more, because there you're responsible to get more work done or more people, and your people interactions and the impact of people interactions is even greater. So certainly you'll be prepared for that, and it will get you better relationships, both at work and outside work. So the one thing is the situational outcome. You're developing a product, you're trying to win a market, you're trying to increase your market share, whatever. That's the situational outcome that you have. But you also have a relationship outcome that you could have. No matter what happens there, are you building good relationships with the people that you're working with as you go along? So certainly better relationships both at work and outside. And in fact, in my case, um, I I found clear, or rather more evidence of improvement in my emotional intelligence outside work compared to inside work. So certainly impact outside. So in any case, those are some of the benefits that I perceive, but there are multiple people outside who have said positively about emotional intelligence, not just in the business but also in real life. Folks like Deepak Chopra or Dale Carnegie, Dalai Lama, and so on. They've all said positively about it, and there's a whole host of people. In my case, I was inspired to some degree to jump into it by Chairman and CEO of Indra Nooyi, who multiple occasions had emphasized the need for a very strong emotional intelligence. And one of the things that always resonates with me is the point that she said that you suspend your judgment about others so much so that even if you strongly disagree, you make such a hard effort to try to understand the other person, that the other person itself feels that, hey, this guy is trying to understand so hard, maybe there may be something that I need to hear about it as well. So at least it inspired me to take the jump here and increase my emotional intelligence. So now I move into some of my experiences, sharing what I did, what worked, what didn't work. So from a self-awareness perspective, the critical thing is document, and it depends how much time you want to do it, but I would suggest at least twice a week, if not more often than that. Document how you felt, under what situation, what were your physiological changes, and then you would then find a pattern, how you feel under certain situations, and that's when you will determine your sensitivities to certain words or certain expressions, and as you become more aware of those, you'll become more adept at managing them, or rather not getting carried away. Introspection, reflection, I talked about it. You have to think harder in order to arrive at your motivations, arrive at your inner desires, so to speak, as to what is really important, and what is that you really value. And then those, when you get into the self-management piece, and you have to make the decision, should I do it, should I not do it, then those values can help you get, does it really matter? Do I really need to do this? So that requires introspection and reflection. In terms of managing the self-management piece and regulating negative emotions, the first point there is to realize that negative feelings will happen, and they happen to everyone, and there's nothing wrong with it. Fear, doubt, guilt, all these feelings are very natural, and they will happen. So it's okay. It's absolutely okay. And in terms of limiting their impact to your thoughts and to your action, is to label them. Is to just label them, give them a name. And as you give them a name, it helps you disassociate that feeling from your rational mind, and it helps you understand better that a feeling essentially is what is it? It's essentially a transient data which may or may not be useful. So for example, in my case, I had a tendency to get really angry when somebody calls me a liar, and so much so that I called it, this is the liar feeling. So it helps me overcome that. Next time I hear that word, somebody calling me liar, I recognize it's the feeling, and it helps me manage it that much more effectively. The other piece here, or the critical piece here, is taking the time to respond. And some people say that even as little as 4 seconds is enough, which is basically a deep breath. And because when you have a negative emotion, your tendency to react to it is very high at the very beginning. And if you've controlled it for the first 4 seconds, it's anyway on the downward trajectory anyway. And if you control this first 4 seconds, you'll probably be able to control it further down. So I think it's a making a conscious effort and documenting when it worked, when it didn't work. That's critical, and that helped me control it. Using emotions to your advantage, that's another piece. We didn't talk a whole lot about it, but in my case, what I did was, whenever I was having these difficult emotions or I was feeling stressed out, I would say, okay, what is it? What actions do I need to take in order to address this emotion? And a lot of times I would have these things while I'm going to bed, or just when I wake up over the weekend. And what I did was, I just used to walk out and write down what actions I need to do. I didn't take the actions, but I just wrote down, okay, in order to address this emotion, I need to do this, this, and this. And that helped me overcome that. And I'll get rid of that stress or get rid of that emotion. And then later on, I'll go back and look at those actions. And sometimes I'll do it and sometimes I don't. But at least it helped me take some action, which I wouldn't have taken otherwise if I would just be lying in the bed and trying to overcome that emotion or get rid of that emotion and not take any action at all. Social awareness. So this is where it's essentially to observe hard, as hard as you can. Observe all the way, entire body language, all the way from the feet to the head. Listen to the tone, facial expressions, every little thing, eyeball movement to a tap on the nose, everything. So focus on all those things, observe harder, and listen to the unspoken. So a lot of times in businesses, management or executives would consciously put in messages in their word, and they would get those messages out without speaking about it. So try to listen to those messages, and this is where working with a peer helped, wherein we could say, okay, this is the message I'm getting. Is this the message you're getting too as well or not? And in some cases, I also checked with those management people later on, saying, look, this was the message I was getting in that meeting. Is that what you intended to give or not? So essentially, there's just hit and trial there. There's nothing more magical than that. In terms of empathy and anticipating, the idea here is to practice before going into meetings with whatever position you're taking, to think, okay, if you take this position, how will they react? How will they feel about it? And if they feel like this, which we don't want them to feel, then you go back and adjust your argument or your line of thinking and iterate it essentially a few times, and develop that every time you go trying to influence somebody or change somebody or accomplish something. Just think about it before you go in. And finally, I talked about this before, post-meeting discussions with the partners. So whenever we had these meetings where multiple people were on, after the meeting, we used to compare notes as to what he read, what I read, what I missed, and what he missed.
So we just had some more questions come on in. The first question is from anonymous individual, and they're asking about. The question is, what are the top 3 cues or indicators when dealing with colleagues that suppress their expressions? And they said, out of politeness or professionalism.
Interesting. What are the clues that they are hiding something internally? I think, so let me make a few of them, but we can get it more detailed into body language. So for one clue is that if the eyeball movement is wavering, going here, there, here, in a group, the guy is not focusing his eyes on a single person at a given time, that can be a message that he's not really meaning what he's saying, something inside that is trying to hide, or too much of going across the nose, some distraction here, wiggle there. That's another indication that that something is not coming, or what he's saying is really not meaning what he's saying. So those are some of the cases, but there's, I mean, every individual has their own ways of doing it. There's no one general answer, but of course, those are some of the ones that I mentioned that I'm aware of.
Those could also be signs of someone managing a Google Hangout. Mark Miltner had just wanted to say, first of all, thanks. But he was also curious if you've encountered Dr. Charles Dwyer at Wharton. He said that this individual is one of the best he's seen in the field of emotional intelligence.
Charles Dwyer? No,
No.
I have not. I have not come across him, and no, unfortunately, no. So I'll list some of the references, the people that I've followed and I've inspired or I've learned from, but he's not one of those.
All right, cool. So that's all the questions we have now. Keep them coming in at theproductmentor.com/live, and I'll keep them going over to Vikas. Back to you.
All right. So the final slide, or the final slide in terms of my experience, was around relationship management, and here clearly the first one that worked was maintaining a log of. And when I say maintaining a log, it was essentially for all the one-on-one interactions that I had with the members of my team, I was actually writing down what is their emotional makeup, what are their career goals, what are their aspirations, what are they struggling with, so as to find out where or how I could essentially blend in their goals with the goals of the organization. So writing it down helped. Another thing helped is acknowledging other people's feelings. It seems pretty obvious, but I found that the results were much greater than I thought in the beginning. So every time you recognize somebody is feeling sad or upset, and if you recognize it and just relax it, just acknowledge it, that itself makes the other person feel so much more relaxed, so much more comfortable, and it helps the relationship. And because it was, at least for me, it was so much of a surprise, I thought it's worth a bullet on my talk. In terms of motivating, I covered some of this before as well. The whole idea here is to genuinely care for your team members, both inside of work and outside the work. Proactively reach out to them for help. Every time there is somebody in the team that needs help, it's an opportunity for you to develop that relationship. Because if he needs help, you go out and help. That's what is going to get your relationship going, and that's what is going to help motivate them. Recognize and give positive feedback, specific feedback. You try to make it as real time as you can, and try to give it as broadly as you can. Again, in my case, I've seen that has helped motivate people doing it. Influencing, providing context. Why are we doing what are we doing? It's really important. It's really important, and also important is to see what is the common goals that we're trying to achieve and how what you're proposing is going to get us there. A lot of times there's not even agreement at the common goals level, so it's somewhat irrelevant to talk at how approaches to achieve and the goals itself are not aligned. So finding those common goals is important, and striving for win-win. The idea here essentially is to look at other people's perspective. What is it that they want? What are their concerns? What is it that you want? And how to find a way to meet your goals as well as addressing their concerns. Find a win-win somehow wherein you get what you want and you address their concerns. And it's simple in principle, but it takes thinking. Sometimes you will not find those win-win, but at least strive to get those. And when you strive to do that, the other person gets it as well, that you're striving to find a way. You're trying to you're trying to address their concerns somehow or the other. You're not just trying to override them or anything, and that makes the other party more more amenable to meeting somewhere in the middle. So I think it's an important piece of of trying to influence others. So that's.
We just got another question that came in, again from the anonymous individual. And so they first wanted to thank you for answering their previous question, and they had a follow-up question for you. How do you address when someone is clearly saying one thing but feeling another without making them upset?
I would say just ask them clearly. I'm getting this message, and am I misreading it, or what's, just ask them. That's the feeling I'm getting. Tell me if I'm wrong, and be open and be transparent about it, and and see how they react. And what I've seen in my case is that if you are more open and if you are more transparent, it helps the other person to be transparent. Of course, if they don't want to, that's a different issue. But it makes the other person feel more comfortable being more open as well.
Yeah, I found that to be the best way as well. Let's see. Oh, Anonymous just posted another question. By the way, Anonymous, feel free to tell us who you are. We're all hanging here in suspense. Steve Burgess, how do you avoid reading too much into someone's reaction? Sometimes a twitch is just a twitch. And I'm not going to start singing.
Yeah.
But
yeah. So I think there's no right or wrong here, right? You have to take it in the context. You have to also look at which person is doing it and how well you know him in the past. So there's no one answer, or there's no clear answer. Rather, you just have to take it with the other clues as well. Don't just go with one clue. Just a twitch may just be just a twitch.
Outstanding. And again, thank you, Anonymous, for saying this is a great broadcast. I appreciate that. Can't wait to meet you someday. Anyway, Vikas is right back to you.
All right, so this is the slide which I was mentioning earlier, some of the resources. I listed some of the books. The first one is the one from Daniel Goleman, which was the initial book which popularized the whole concept itself. That's a long book. If you don't have the time to read it, there's another one on emotional intelligence by HBR. These are a set of 10 papers from different authors, a couple of them from Daniel Goleman himself, which is a good read. And then Emotional Intelligence 2.0 by Bradley and Greaves. This is the one I was mentioning earlier. It is focusing on things that you can do to improve your emotional intelligence competencies. It has some specifics, action that is suggesting you to do. They also have some videos from Hollywood where they're saying, okay, watch this video and then see how the movie stars are exhibiting certain emotions and so on and so forth. So essentially, it's a different dimension around it, and it also has these tools of, you set up goals in their system when you want to reach it by, and they can send reminders and emails and stuff like that. So some tools around to essentially keep you motivated as you go along this journey of improving your emotional intelligence. And the final book is this Getting to Yes, Negotiating Agreement Without Giving. So this is an interesting book. I listed it out because, especially if you're trying to influence people and striving to win-win and so on, it's a very good read because it's written from a perspective of how to negotiate, but a lot of those concepts there are very applicable when you try to influence people as well. So I wanted to list that as well. And finally, the Emotional Intelligence Consortium, that's the website I mentioned earlier, which has a whole host of information there, more books, more papers from some of the authors, and it also has links to other sites that I was mentioning, which allows you to take these self-assessments, if you will. So finally, I think the key question here, the key question that each one of us essentially has to answer for ourselves is emotional intelligence a part of me, or is it a missing puzzle piece that I have to find? And if it is a missing puzzle piece, or if I don't know if it is or not, then will I embark on this journey of improving my emotional intelligence and take a chance that might improve my job satisfaction, my relationships, and greater satisfaction or greater success both in my professional and personal life? That's the question. That's all I had, Jeremy.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, we don't have. It looks like we only have one more comment from anonymous, and just a quick recommendation that I'll pass along to everyone else who's joining us. He says, or she says that Daniel Goleman also wrote a book called Social Intelligence, which is quite interesting as well. So, don't know much about that one, but. Definitely, it might be something worth checking out. And again, thank you to our speaker, Vikas Batra, Senior Product Manager at Alcatel-Lucent, for today's discussion of the role of emotional intelligence in product. This was really great, a lot of great detail, a lot of really good conversation. And also, the presentation that everyone just saw will be posted up to our SlideShare channel. And again, a big thank you from me, Jeremy Horn, the product guy, to everyone who joined us today from within the program and really from the wider world. And also, if you're interested in being a mentor, and we really need a lot more mentors, we have a backlog of over 500 mentees. Session 4 starts November 1st, and we're looking to get a lot of mentors. So maybe if it's not you, you might know someone who might be a great mentor. Please tell them or yourself, visit theproductmentor.com and sign up today to be a mentor. And then you could be just like the cool mentor that you saw today. And also, if you're looking to fill a new product job with a great product person, visit our very own, it's free for everybody, job board at theproductjobs.com. And again, thank you everyone, and I'll see you guys all again pretty soon. Bye.